The conviction of Lucy Letby, sentenced to 15 whole life orders for the murder of 7 infants and the attempted murder of 7 others, is now subject to renewed scrutiny, and a panel of 14 international neonatologists has presented what they claim to be significant new medical evidence that could call into question the basis of the prosecution's case. And this raises fundamental questions. Was there a miscarriage of justice? And could this conviction, one of the most high-profile in recent British history, be overturned? At the heart of the case is the assertion that Letby deliberately injected air into the veins of multiple infants, causing fatal air embolisms. And the prosecution leaned heavily on research of Dr. Shu Lee, a respected Canadian neonatologist whose 1989 study on air embolism in babies was referenced extensively in the trial. However, Dr. Lee now argues that his findings were misinterpreted and misrepresented in court. He says the key signs of air embolism, Lee's sign and the Leibermeister sign, were absent in the infants Letby was accused of harming. Furthermore, he maintains that air embolism is an exceedingly rare condition that cannot be diagnosed through a process of elimination, as was allegedly done in Letby's case. Dr. Lee is not alone in his concerns. The other neonatologists have expressed doubts about the prosecution's reliance on skin discoloration as evidence of air embolism, arguing that such discoloration can result from multiple other conditions, including the administration of vasoactive drugs during resuscitation efforts. If these expert opinions gain traction, they could significantly undermine the medical basis for Letby's conviction. That's not necessarily enough, though. Having exhausted her appeals in court, Letby's legal team is now preparing to submit her case to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, and the CCRC investigates potential miscarriages of justice and has the authority to refer cases back to the Court of Appeal if it finds a real possibility that the conviction could be quashed. However, the bar for such referrals is extremely high, and the defence must produce compelling new evidence that was unavailable at trial or present a fundamentally new legal argument. And while the expert panel's findings may be significant, they must go beyond merely reinterpreting previously examined evidence. The prosecution has already argued that no single piece of evidence convicted Letby, but rather the broader context of unusual deaths occurring under her care. Therefore, for the CCRC to intervene, Letby's team must demonstrate that a substantial portion of the forensic case against her was flawed, not just one strand of the prosecution's argument. That's quite a high bar. And the controversy surrounding Letby's conviction has also entered the political arena. Sir David Davis, the former minister, has publicly called for a retrial, arguing that the medical evidence presented at the trial was unreliable. And this aligns with the efforts of Letby's new legal team, led by human rights barrister Mark MacDonald, who has long contended that the lead prosecution expert, Dr. Dewey Evans, was not reliable, and the involvement of figures like Davis adds political weight to the case and may increase public pressure on the CCRC to take action. But public inquiries and ongoing police reviews complicate the matter. The Thirlwell inquiry, led by Lady Justice Thirlwell, is investigating how Letby was able to continue working despite concerns raised by consultants. Additionally, Cheshire Constabulary continues to review 4,000 cases linked to Letby's time at the Countess of Chester Hospital and Liverpool Women's Hospital. If further allegations emerge from this review, they could counterbalance efforts to question her conviction. Despite the arguments put forward by Letby's supporters, therefore, significant hurdles remain. While Dr. Lee and the new panel argue that alternative medicine explanations exist, the original trial featured multiple experts who supported the prosecution's case. Unless the CCRC, therefore, is convinced that there was a fundamental miscarriage of expert interpretation, it may not act. Letby's conviction was not based solely on air embolism evidence, but also on patterns of sudden collapses and deaths occurring disproportionately during her shifts, on witness testimonies and her own written notes. And any successful challenge must address the cumulative body of this evidence. In addition, Letby's already failed on 2 appeals, and the Court of Appeal dismissed Dr. Lee's arguments when they were presented last year, suggesting that unless new decisive evidence is presented, the likelihood of a retrial remains low. Lucy Letby's case has ignited a complex debate at the intersection of law and medicine, and while the panel's findings will undoubtedly add fuel to the arguments of those who believe she is innocent, the hurdles for overturning her conviction remain substantial. The CCRC requires more than just differing medical interpretations. It requires irrefutable evidence that the original trial was fundamentally flawed. And whether this panel can provide such a breakthrough remains to be seen. In the end, the question is not just about Lucy Letby's guilt or innocence, it's about the robustness of the justice system in Britain itself in handling complex medical cases. But if this is simply a case of dissenting expert opinions, then I'm afraid the verdict is unlikely to change. Time and further scrutiny will determine which side prevails. My own instinct is that the conviction of Lucy Letby is extremely unsound. I also have serious concerns about the present management of the justice system. At the same time, I am very much aware of the multiple deaths that occurred under her care, and they also need to be explained. So there are three issues, in my mind at least, that require that cause concern, and I think after a trial there should be a sense of certainty, and there definitely isn't in the case of Lucy Letby.